going to really be talking about is those three particular legs. And obviously, it's a situation where we want to make sure that we can go ahead and combat these particular attacks, or at least just defense against them. And that's huge for us over here at the Mimecast side, just because we see a huge uptick in these particular attacks, and that's really why we get a lot of calls over into the Mimecast console. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you in the Mimecast administration console what those particular documents look like when they come in. Now, the first thing we're going to start off with is attachment protection. And attachment protection is pretty big for us over here at Mimecast. And the reason why I bring that up is because right now a lot of security companies claim to have a great security standpoint as far as sandboxing goes. And that's huge. Obviously, to have anything in place is going to be very beneficial. And with sandboxing itself, it becomes a scenario where it's an isolated environment where we're able to go ahead, throw in these malicious attachments, and have them execute their payload. Whether that's injecting JavaScript code, whether that's downloading some sort of ransomware such as WannaCry or the Petya ransomware. Regardless of whatever it may be, attachments have become smarter, just as hackers have become smarter. Evasion techniques are becoming more and more popular nowadays. And really what that means is for you is that you want to make sure that you're very well protected and that you're able to actually utilize the sandbox correctly. Now, with the attachments that are coming in nowadays, we've noticed that they're now able to be detected when they're being ran on an actual sandboxed environment. Now, what that means for Mimecast is we have to think of another way to be able to go ahead and address this type of evasion tactic. Now, if they're able to go ahead and detect that they're being ran on a traditional virtualized sandbox, they can go ahead and lay dormant for up to, let's say, 2 years. Now, what that really means for you is that these viruses can hang out in the shadows. And that's not good because not only is that dangerous for us because of delayed weaponization, but it becomes a scenario where that becomes ineffective in that particular sandbox environment. So at Mimecast, we do a little bit differently. At Mimecast, we go ahead and we do something called bare metal emulation. And essentially, bare metal emulation really just means that we're actually able to go ahead and mimic desktops, laptops, but really human interaction. And human interaction itself is really important because we're now able to go ahead, trick these particular malicious attachments that are able to detect if they're being ran on a virtualized sandbox to now being fooled to thinking they're actually being ran on an end user's machine. That part over here is very big because it makes it easier for us to be able to go ahead and have a nice visual of what would have happened if this particular attachment was able to execute its payload on our end user's machine, hence the entire network. And obviously, the scariest part is once it's on one user's machine, it's very easy for these malicious macros and ransomware and malware to move left and right throughout inside an organization. And that particular part right there is very big just because if it is able to go ahead and infect one machine, it will spread. And I think the average spread time right now, according to a study that was done back in 2015, mind you, that was 2 years ago, attachments were able to go ahead and move laterally throughout a network, infect machines within a minute and 30 seconds. So your time to act as an administrator is very short. And you really want to be able to go ahead and have a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach. So with Mimecast, the ability to go ahead and sandbox is huge. But also comes another scenario that is really a caveat to this, and that's delay. Obviously, we're in a world where I think you'd rather be safe than sorry, but I can definitely understand scenarios where it gets down to, hey, we cannot afford any delay, depending on the specific vertical you're in, whether it be finance, legal, healthcare, anything of that nature that really time is of the essence. Mimecast does understand that sometimes that may not be the best option with that kind of a delay. Now with Mimecast, we do have about a minute 30 average sandboxing time, and that's probably the fastest in the biz right now. But that being said, we need to be able to figure out a way to get these attachments to the end user in a timely fashion. So this way, if they're on their way to a meeting, if there's a presentation that they're actually hosting, whatever it may be, we want to make sure they have those documents in hand and ready to rock and roll. So with Mimecast, we've actually developed something called safe file copy transcription. And safe file copy transcription itself essentially just means that we're going to be taking these particular documents. Other than sandboxing, we're going to be able to go ahead and take these documents and convert them into a high-resolution PDF. And what that does is that strips out any type of malicious code, any malicious links, and therefore you have a document that you can have in your hand to be ready to go into these meetings and be prepared, as opposed to having to wait for a document that needs to be sandboxed. Obviously, it's a double-edged sword, but we do have the ability to go ahead and take care of both of those sides. And that's something that definitely sets Mimecast apart as far as attachment protection goes. Now, we also have the ability to go ahead and just preemptively sandbox anything that comes into the Mimecast administration console and really give the admin the ability to go ahead and look at those particular documents that are coming inside. As you can see here with Mimecast, we do provide an attachment protection dashboard page. And the specific dashboard page right here is really to go ahead and give you some sort of a metric, something that the admin can go ahead and look at and say, hey, as far as attachments are concerned, this is what's going on inside our environment. Whether it be how many sandbox attachments per day, whether it just be how many attachments have been sandboxed in general. You'll be able to go up and pull that information. We'll go ahead and we'll categorize that by the top senders of those particular attachments in case you're under an attack campaign. But we can also go ahead and find the top recipients, just in case we see somebody getting bullied out there that's just getting hammered with certain attacks and certain email attachments that could be malicious to the machine as well as the network. We organize them by actual category, so this way you can see, but we also specify the direction of traffic. So this way you can see if it's an inbound, an outbound, or journaling, which is short for internal email traffic that would traditionally bypass archiving as well as security standpoints. Now, with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift gears out of attachments and move to something a little bit more interesting. For me over here at Mimecast, the one thing that I see really constantly, and the questions that I get asked, is really a situation where, hey, what can you guys do for malicious URLs? Malicious URLs themselves are becoming more and more prevalent. We've noticed a huge uptick over here in the Mimecast side. Now, a lot of traditional security standpoints today are able to go ahead and scan the gateway, and that's huge. Anytime an email starts to come into our organization, we're scanning it, we're going to go ahead and say, hey, is this clean or is it unclean? Is there malicious code on this particular URL? Maybe it's going to go ahead and extract Google Chrome or Firefox saved credentials. Anytime you hit that Remember Me button, essentially that's what's happening, and those credentials are now stored inside the browser, therefore making it very easy for the hacker to be able to go ahead, extract that information, and now have all of your login credentials. If they're not going on that route, they may decide that, hey, we just want to install a keylogger and just see what kind of information this particular end user is typing, whether it be credentials, whether it be certain PII or any type of identification information or credit cards or social security numbers. They'll be able to go ahead and harvest that particular information. Now, with Mimecast, we do understand that that's obviously a huge attack vector. Therefore, we say scanning at the gateway is not enough. And probably the best example that I give is the fact that if I was the hacker and I was to create a beautifully spoofed message, and more so spoofed just really means an email message that looks like it came from, you know, somebody inside your organization, all the way down to the picture that you see in your email when they actually send you an email, or their signature, or anything of that nature, even if it's just verbiage, that's totally fine. I'll be able to go ahead, create this particular spoofed email, and include a URL. Now the trick is here. With that particular URL that I'm going to go ahead and send out in my beautifully spoofed message, it's going to be a completely blank URL. It's going to go to a blank website. The reason why I do this is because I understand that you most likely have gateway scanning for malicious URLs. Therefore, with Mimecast, we have now the ability to go ahead and block those at that point, but we also have the ability to go ahead and scan in real time. And the reason why we do that is simply this. If I was to send you that email at 8 p.m. at night, and you've already left the office, you're not looking inside your corporate email, you're having dinner with the family. Therefore, that email has now bypassed your traditional gateway scanning because it sees the URL as not being deemed malicious. Now, while you're sleeping that night, as everybody knows, it's pretty easy to go ahead and spin up a website or change any of the content with all the tools that are available nowadays. Now I can go ahead and weaponize my particular URL, so this way, when you come into work in the morning, I've already went ahead and weaponized that particular URL. And when you see it's from, let's say, finance, and they're saying, hey, we had a mix-up with your direct deposit information. We still want to make sure that you get paid. Please do us a favor. Go ahead and click on this link and update your direct deposit information so this way we can ensure prompt payment. That's not very uncommon at all, that particular language that they're using on that. And it's usually 9 times out of 10, the end user is going to go ahead and click on that because they want to get paid. Now, I've already weaponized that URL, so as soon as you click it, I've already went ahead and I've pwned the system. I'm now going ahead and extracting credentials. I'm injecting JavaScript code. I'm installing keyloggers. I'm utilizing zero-day exploits. I'm downloading ransomware such as the Petya or the WannaCry ransomware, and I'm going to demand 300 Bitcoin to go ahead and send you a decryption key so this way you can get your data back. Now, other than the danger of me moving laterally throughout the network, it becomes a scenario where the machine is compromised. And once that machine is compromised, there's no telling what the hacker can do because they've now access to that full machine. Now, with URL protection, there's another facet that we do. Not only do we go ahead and we rewrite all URLs and scan them every time that you click them, regardless of the age of the email, to go ahead and give you that double layer of protection, but we also educate the end user. And the reason why we do that is pretty simple, in the fact that we understand that admins are very busy. When it comes to the point where end users want to be able to go ahead and really make sure that, hey, your end users are doing their due diligence and checking to see who these emails are coming from, you can't always depend on them for that. And that's totally fine because these hackers are becoming more and more clever these days. Evasion tactics are through the roof. So therefore, at Mimecast, we utilize something called user awareness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring up a malicious URL that I went ahead and I've sent myself. So this way you can go ahead and see what it looks like. Now, obviously you can see here that we've actually rewritten that URL, and it's a long Mimecast URL. It's not something that's short. It's not something that's easy to mimic. But with Mimecast, we utilize something called user awareness. And that's our ability to go ahead and train the end user for the admin. So really, if you go ahead and you click on these links frequently, I think the average time to click when a user opens an email to click on a link is about 30 seconds. A lot of the times they're not even reading the actual body of the message. They're not validating the sender. Even if they weren't expecting an email from that individual, 9 times out of 10 the user still opens it. So at Mimecast, we're going to go ahead and act as that man in the middle. And the reason why we do that is so we can go ahead and make sure that your end users are not infected. But the thing is, we want to go ahead and we want it to be an active training. If we just go ahead and we take control over it and it becomes a firewall situation where every time they try to go to a malicious website, we just block it right off the bat, nobody's learning. Now what we're able to go ahead and do is go ahead and prompt them with a splash page that gives them the ability to go ahead and make an educated decision. And the reason why we do that is simply this: to empower the end user. And we not only go ahead and we give them pertinent email information to go ahead and make an educated decision on this particular email, but we also give them pro tips from our security team, whether it's from somebody they don't recognize, whether they weren't expecting that email in general. Maybe the name doesn't match the email address. If it wasn't specifically addressed to you, such as a generalization, dear customer, very, very common. And I would say 9 times out of 10 you're going to see spelling or grammatical errors. Whatever the reasons may be, they're going to have the ability to go ahead and click exit and hopefully make the right choice on this malicious website. But they also have the ability to go ahead and click accept or to continue. Regardless, their decision is going to be logged. The reason why we do this is so we can go ahead and make sure that we give the admin the ability to go ahead and see who's clicking on these emails. Now, if one machine was infected, as an end user, you may not know it right off the bat, but an admin will be able to go ahead and pinpoint that particular user, the machine that they use, and really be able to go ahead and start remediation process and really try to fix the issue. Now, you're probably wondering, the ability that we give them the accept or continue option, it's a little bit frightening because are we actually going to let the end users to these malicious websites? And the answer, in short, is no. The reason why we put this here is to really train these end users. And as you can see here, I'm literally going to go ahead and click accept or continue, and it's going to make it really easy and straightforward for me because it's just going to tell me if the access is blocked or not. If this particular website seemed to be malicious in any way, shape, or form, Mimecast now acts as a firewall, and we'll be able to go ahead and prevent the end user from ever even reaching that particular URL. Now, that particular portion right there is our user awareness and our URL protect. What I'm going to do is now shift gears over to our impersonation protection options that we have. And the reason why I bring these up very frequently is just because impersonation emails are probably one of the most common ones that we see on a day-to-day basis. A lot of the times you're going to see an end user that receives an email and it's going to look like it's from the boss, but it is not from the boss. Whether it be, you could just tell from the language that they're using or just their spelling in general. A lot of the times there's grammatical errors. But if you weren't expecting an email from them in general, obviously, hopefully you would make the correct decision, but it's not always that easy. Over here at Mimecast, we definitely understand that it's not always easy for an end user to go ahead and pinpoint when these particular emails are coming from somebody that says they're somebody else. So Mimecast, we've developed something called Impersonation Protection. Impersonation Protection in a nutshell is essentially our way to go ahead and have key identifiers in an email that are going to enable us to be able to go ahead and flag these messages, stop them at the gateway, or hold them so this way an administrator or a moderator, or even in some cases an end user, can go ahead and make a decision without ever becoming infected or acting on that specific email in general. Some of these particular identifiers are as follows, and I'll go ahead and I'll go through each of these for you so I can do a quick breakdown. But the first one I would say is really nice because we're one of the only ones that are doing this right now. It's similar internal domain name matching. And in the lamest terms as possible, we basically say, hey, if we see that an email address, Adib Sarakabi, asarakabi@mimecast.com, if we see that as Mimecast.com, where they go ahead and they take a lowercase r and a lowercase n, and they slam those up next to each other, they almost look like an M. It's actually only 1 pixel off. Therefore, we're actually able to utilize something called the Levenstein distance algorithm. And all of that really means is how many letters off from our actual email domain, mimecast.com, is Mimecast.com, or vice versa, whatever the actual message may be. We're going to be able to go ahead, pick a similarity distance to how many letters it can be off, so this way you are protected from those cousin domains, what we call typo squatting, which is one of the oldest attacks in the book. Now, a lot of the times when these particular, we'll say cousin domains are registered, they're registered with a stolen credit card. Obviously, the hacker doesn't want to go ahead and utilize their own personal credit card. They'll go ahead and they'll buy one off the dark web for about 20 bucks. And obviously, you know, that's pretty scary to be able to go ahead and get that type of information for only 20 US dollars. But the one thing that I will say that's a benefit on this side of the pond is the fact that we understand that these particular hackers are going ahead, they're buying these with stolen credit cards. When the credit card company finds out that the particular credit card was used to go ahead and register an email domain, they'll go ahead and they'll reach out to that hosting domain and say, hey, can you please turn off this website? This website was purchased using a stolen credit card of one of my clients. Therefore, the hosting company will shut that down. So they'll only have a limited amount of days where they can go ahead and act out that particular email attack campaign. So in Mimecast, we're actually looking for newly observed domains. And really what that means is any email domain that's been sending mail for less than 7 days, we're going to go ahead and flag on that as well. Now, another thing that we also do that goes ahead and helps us really go ahead and hone down on these impersonation attacks is the ability to synchronize with your Active Directory. Everybody logs into their laptop, everybody logs into their desktop, they have their first initial, last name, or whatever it may be, and that's what they're used to as far as credentials go. With Mimecast, we understand that you have a display name, such as Adib Sarakabi or John Heger or Zoe Maslin. Whatever it may be, we now know that there's certain email addresses that are associated with those display names. So if those email addresses do not match what Mimecast has on file for those internal users, we can now go ahead and flag on that particular email as well. Another feature that we've recently added is the reply to address mismatch. And all of this one really does is just add an extra solidification process to where now, as opposed to having to go ahead and click through Outlook or Office 365 to say, hey, if I was to reply to this message, who would it go to? Would it go to the individual that I see on my screen, or is it going to go to a hacker overseas that's waiting for my credentials, or maybe, you know, for example, maybe some W-2 information or direct deposit info? We're now able to go ahead and check this on the fly. So this way, if we go ahead and we were to respond to that email, we know who it would go to. And if it doesn't go to the individual that we see right in front of us when we're looking at that email, we're also going to go ahead and flag that particular message. And in all of this in conjunction, we've also added this over to our targeted threat dictionary. All of those emails that you've seen in the past, whether it be something that you've experienced personally or in your corporate environment, any of those words or terminologies that you traditionally see in a spoofing email or an impersonation attack email, such as the request of a wire transfer, payment, processing, W-2, anything of that nature that is a telltale sign of one of these particular types of emails, we're now able to go ahead and apply our vast dictionary to those particular terms and look for a match. And if we find a match, we'll go ahead and we'll flag that message. As you can see here, all you need to really do is select how many of these you need to trigger before we take action on that message. And as you can see, we have multiple options, whether it be to hold the message, on a user or a moderator or an administrative capacity, but we also have the ability to go ahead and bounce it. So this way, you as the end user will never even receive the email, and you can continue on with business as usual. Now, that kind of wraps up the impersonation protection piece. One thing that we've recently added is our internal email protect, and it really solidifies the targeted threat protection suite in the fact that all the features and benefits that you've seen today, whether it be protecting against attachments, but also going ahead and doing best-of-breed sandboxing with bare metal emulation, but also safe file copy transcription, but also that real-time URL protection scanning. So this way you're not just protected at the gateway, but those delayed weaponized URLs you're also protected against, or the impersonation emails themselves. Mimecast is now able to go ahead and not only do that protection from an inbound standpoint, but we can now go ahead and do it on an outbound standpoint. So this way, if an end user's machine was ever infected, and it was to go ahead and send out emails to your colleagues and coworkers, they won't be infected. Anybody externally that you do business with, maybe you have a friend at another company that you email regularly, you don't want to infect them because that just becomes a situation where they're going to have to deal with it with their IT staff. But also, we want to make sure that even your internal coworkers don't even receive those. So at Mimecast, we're now able to go ahead, utilizing our journaling connector and IEP, apply these same security policies not only to the inbound and the outbound, but to the internal. So this way, you know, your friend over in HR, one of your teammates over in finance, maybe somebody from, you know, any other team that you may work with closely, they're also protected. So you don't have to go ahead and worry, am I going to go ahead and infect anybody else? Everybody's protected, inbound, outbound, and internally. And that's Mimecast targeted threat protection along with IEP. I guess right now we can go ahead and we can shift it over to some questions. Angie, I'll pass it back over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Adib. Very nice.
No problem.
Any questions? If anybody has any questions, please go ahead and use the chat window, and I'll stand by. You can send the questions directly to me or to the entire audience. This is Angie Moskalenko again. I'm listed as the organizer. Any questions at all? Nice presentation, Adib. Thank you very much. We'll give people a couple minutes to think about any questions. And yeah.
Not a problem. Thank you, Angie.
My pleasure. Okay, well, I think, Adib, you did such a great job. There are no questions. I'm not seeing any come across right now, but if anybody does happen to have any questions, please feel free to contact us over here at Afinety. Again, my name is Angie Moskalenko. You can go ahead and contact any of us here at Afinety. You can contact our support team. They'll get the email over to me, and we can go from there. But if you'd like pricing, you already are using Mimecast, either the Enterprise or the Express version. So if you'd like to add this bundle, the Targeted Threat Protection bundle, we can give you pricing on that and more information if you'd like. And just to let you know, we've got monthly and sometimes more frequently, we've got Afinety University sessions or educational sessions that we've got going on. If you'd like to take a look at our schedule, just go to our website and go to Afinety University. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I think I'm going to go ahead and conclude the presentation unless there's anything else from Adib or John or Zoe from Mimecast.
No, I think we're good. Thank you very much to everybody that attended today. And again, obviously, any questions, please feel free to direct them to Angie, and we can get those cleared up for you.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.